Hey guys, today we're talking about a pretty heavy topic. Talking about abuse, child abuse, mental health is an issue. But we just wanted to give a couple of numbers here before we got started. If you or someone you know is a victim of child abuse, please give this number a call. It's 1-800-422-4453. It's something that needs to be taken care of, so please get help if you need it.
And if you know someone that has any issues with domestic violence or even yourself, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233.
Well, another Thursday. Another episode of Thursday Thunderdome. I'm Chris. He's Tyler.
Hey.
Every week, guys, we talk about a different topic. We throw it around and see what we can figure out about it. This week, we're going to be bringing back a little bit of something we brought up not too long ago. Fandom-ish. More specifically, drilling down into the whole Michael Jackson situation. So there was this documentary that came out not too long ago, Tyler.
Like maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, at most.
Leaving Neverland. We've both watched it. 4-hour time commitment. If you commit to the Oprah special afterwards, an additional hour.
Just 4 for me. You did all 5.
I did all 5. But what I think what we should do to start this off is you mentioned in the music episode that Michael Jackson is your all-time favorite artist.
Yeah. Ever since I was like a little kid, I've always been into Michael Jackson. I was born in '87, so like really that was like the height of his popularity. So it was just kind of always around. And going into the '90s, I learned to dance by watching him. Like I would study his videos over and over again to figure out
Just
what
like
he was
so
doing.
many other kids that looked up to him.
Yeah, and like I studied them, and there was probably in the like late 90s, early 2000s, there was like the 30th anniversary, and this is like this huge like 3-hour special, like a bunch of guests came out, and this is a big deal, and I had recorded it on VHS, and I watched that video so many times, like looking at like his moves and the music he was doing for that, and like because he brought out the Jackson 5 and he had like Justin Timberlake on and like all this kind of stuff, and that was like my obsession. And like all through high school, I listened to his music and still was like watching and practicing his moves and like doing all that in his music, which is something that was instantly recognizable. And you like Billie Jean, you can hear like that first snare hit. Wherever I'm in like any kind of club, if they're like mixing or whatever, I hear that snare. I'm like, oh, Billie Jean's gonna come on like a song or two, and I'm ready and I'm for it. And whenever I performed dancing in college, I almost always did a Michael Jackson song as part of that, as whether tribute or just because I love his music and his style and all that. So like he was like his music is and was important to me for all that, as it was like a large part of my life. And then I've always known about the molestations, and it's not like back then I was like, oh, he didn't do it. I was like, oh, that motherfucker did it for sure. But it was easy for me to be like, well, I don't know, I like his music. Like, I can separate all that, and
it was easy to distance between the two.
Right. It's just like the man versus the music, and that's really like just not really a good excuse. I mean, you can recognize talent. Like, obviously, he's a super talented individual, and
sure. I mean, there's a reason why he was the pop star, right? He was the king of pop because he was the best.
Yeah, and even like I talked about like the hate group Comicsgate a couple episodes ago, and there's like the leader of them, Ethan Van Sciver, who's a total scumbag of a person. Just fuck that guy. He's a really good artist, and like I can understand that, but like I'm not gonna support his shit anymore because he's a terrible human being, and really I should be doing that with more of my stuff. But the idea of, I mean, it's hard, especially when Michael Jackson's essentially an institution of music.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think we're going through it similar with another artist, R. Kelly, right? So
less of an institution, but
Right, but it's still yet a popular musician who had some big hits. You know, he just recently lost his mind on national TV.
I
You
didn't
know,
watch it. I heard about
it
it
was
though, but I never did watch
insane.
it.
You know, I mean, he's over here yelling at Gayle King, and she's just thinking, "Oh, thank God, this is awesome! Wow,
Yeah.
keep going. Just don't walk off set because this is awesome for my ratings."
Right. And like,
You know,
who our age like isn't gonna hear Ignition Remix and be like, I think like everyone our age knows every word of that song because it was so popular at the time.
yeah,
It was
for
crazy,
sure.
and
You know, and just separating artist from art, I think, is becoming increasingly more difficult in the time that we live in.
right.
Because if you think about it, back when Michael Jackson first got accused of, molestation back in the early 90s, well, I mean, yeah, if you watched the news, you knew about it, and it was a lot easier to dismiss because it wasn't ever present, in front of you on your smartphone, on your
Right.
computer, on your tablet, all over the place. I mean, you can watch this documentary on the go, just pull out your phone and watch it on the subway.
Yeah. And like it's always been around too, and I brought this up. I don't know if it was in fandom or not, but like John Lennon, he's famously a terrible person. Like
Yeah.
he was a bad person. Like fuck that guy, and like his music's whatever. Who cares? But like
He also wrote some of the most iconic songs ever.
yeah,
And so
but like
you have to go, can I separate the two?
right, and it's easy for people to do. Be like, oh, like that didn't affect me as he abused his son and his wife over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have a hard time with it. I feel like there's probably going to be a point in my life where I go, you know what? I want to listen to that Michael Jackson song.
Right.
I want to listen to Bad or Beat It or, Billie Jean. There's going to be a point where I'm going to get a craving to hear that tune again because it was a good tune.
Yeah,
But I'm
and
gonna
and,
struggle.
and I'm not saying like I'm just like all of a sudden like I just dropped all Michael Jackson music. Like I'm not actively listening to it right now or anything, but it's not to say I'm not gonna go back. And it's hard. Like it's yeah, like I don't think you should separate the person and the music because it all kind of feels together. It's all like one thing. You can't just like really separate it like that. Even though I'm sure I will be listening to Michael Jackson music or like Chris Brown music. I like his music. He's an awful human being and just again another person that should just go fuck off into nowhere and be gone forever. But like he's still around. He's still making a bunch of money in music and
Yeah.
or like
Hand over fist, man.
right.
And I don't know. I struggle. So we own Bad on vinyl, and every now and then we'll bust it out and play it. But I'm less inclined now, after all of this, has come out, and it's not like, oh my God, we didn't know about these things, but it hadn't been brought up in how long? I think Wade Robson, finally admitted to what happened in 2013, and I vaguely remember hearing about that in the news.
I see.
How it was getting dismissed because it had gone past the statute of limitations and like the judge wasn't going to hear it, not because he didn't have facts or he didn't believe him, but because it had been so long since what he claims happened had happened. There is a thing in our judicial system where if it's been too many years since the accusation, you can't do anything about it.
which is crazy, but
It is
that's a
insane,
whole other
but that's
thing.
that's the world we live in, and so that's the world he lives in. And he said in the Oprah special that he wasn't trying necessarily to get millions of dollars from the estate of Michael Jackson. He really was just trying to bring attention to what happened to him on the biggest stage he could possible, which I half believe that. I mean, the other part of me is like, you're money grab a little bit too, maybe. Like, there's always a little component of that if you're going to sue for, $40 million or whatever it was he sued for. But at the same
Yeah,
time, like,
I mean, I guess, but
he
like,
still needs
Michael Jackson ruined that dude's life.
Right, he did.
So like,
And
you're saying money grab like it's a negative thing, but like, one,
Right.
you don't know what he would do with that money. Two, like, that is how you get in the news, like making this like
Exactly.
big statement. So like, I think to say like, oh yeah, it's a money grab, even if you're saying like he's doing it for the right reason, like that's like a negative connotation and part of like what happens to abuse like victims, like they get told their things don't matter, like
Right.
whether it happened or not, and like even not on the scale of like Michael Jackson, it's abuse victims often are told that can't be true, don't talk about it, that kind of thing. Not even through the abuse the abuser themselves, but just like friends and family, like they don't believe it, and because it couldn't happen.
Well, right, because it's not just the abused is friends and family, it's the abuser.
Right.
Who's also friend and family in most cases. Because it's usually a close personal friend or family member that has done the abuse.
Yeah, it's very rare that like these like situations are just some person off the street, unless you
No.
have like an Elizabeth Smart situation where they get abducted in the woods for a year or two or however long
Right.
it was.
Right.
It's
I
obviously
mean,
like the most extreme case, but it's people that you know.
right. I mean, and like what happens off the street is women get attacked and raped, right? But for a child to be molested, in the sense that Michael Jackson did it, there's a grooming component where
Well, same for women too.
Yeah.
Like that's not like rape attacks are also
They're-
mostly people that you know.
mostly people I guess what I'm saying is there a lot more times they can be a crime of passion, where to do what Michael Jackson did, there's a lot more grooming I think maybe involved with it. Not to take anything away from a rape victim by any means, both horrible.
But there is like,
there's still
the
going to
grooming
be a
aspect,
grooming
like,
component
and like
to
a
it.
large of it too, because like, in this documentary, which really like isn't about Michael Jackson,
No.
it's about abuse and the survival of the
He is
of
a
abuse.
part of this documentary.
Like he's just like the wheel they spin it on. Really, like it could have been anybody. It just
Right.
happened to be Michael Jackson, and he's like one of the most famous people in the world. But like abuse victims, like it's all like the same stuff. Like I was watching this documentary, and it's all the same stuff that I've seen and read before as well. Of this is because like this is how we show we love each other, like that kind of thing, and like keeping it secret. Like if this gets out, like it'll ruin both of us. Like we'll be taken away, we'll be going to jail, and that gets told to like not just children, but like other abuse victims as well. And like we keep saying women, like men are abused too.
Of course.
But that's all like standard things in like this abuse cycle of like either like it's about love and like people are getting jealous or like and they get isolated. Like isolation is like the big one. Like if people start being taken away and like they can no longer see their friends and family, they almost like it's like they're getting brainwashed essentially.
Yeah.
And they hit on that a lot in the documentary, like where these kids like they talk about like we loved him, like even when all this stuff was happening, like we loved him,
Right.
And like we were jealous, like when he was with another kid or stuff like that.
Right. They even talked about like there's still a big part of them that loves Michael Jackson in that sense because of the way he groomed them, the way he brought them up to love him.
Right, and
and they what they did, they thought they were doing out of love.
And when he died, like they both Wade Robson and I can't remember the other guy's name, they both had like panic attacks and like kind of collapsed because like this person that they both loved and hated had passed away, like this big part of their lives, and that doesn't really go away when they get older or anything, or can like rationalize more as an adult of like, oh, this is what happened, and even. Later, they talk about like Michael invited Wade and his wife over to like dinner or whatever, and like he was happy to go. He was excited to see Michael Jackson because he loved him. Like that was part of it. Like because he was trained to do that or trained to be like that.
And what's crazy to me is, so yeah, he goes over and he loves him, but at the same time, him and James Safechuck's the other guy's name, they have hate, but not towards him. Towards themselves.
Right.
Like they don't understand why. Why do I feel this hate towards myself? This anger towards myself. And it wasn't until they're both very grown men, I think in their 30s, before they realize this isn't my fault. This is somebody else's fault.
Right, and again, that's like a very common abuse thing. Like a lot of abuse victims blame themselves because that's what they're told, and like I don't know if they like totally went into this as much in the documentary, but a lot of it is like the abuser will like basically tell them that no one will love them except that person. So like they keep breaking this person down and further down until they're basically they think the only love that they can get is from this abuser, regardless of what they're doing, whether like violently raping or like hitting, like emotional abuse, like any of that, but they all think in the end that it's their fault, and they don't go speak out against that because they think that's all that they have, and that this is the way that they're trained, and this happens to these two guys as well, that they think it's their fault essentially.
Yeah, and the moms.
Jesus.
The moms really like it threw me. I mean, I guess I'm just ignorant on a lot of this stuff. We were talking a little beforehand, and I was just saying I never really, I hear the words child abuse, I hear the words child molestation, rape or whatever, and I don't think about there being a grooming process and the trust building and all that stuff. That's not something that I've ever really read up on or really known about. And the fact that Michael Jackson was able to get the moms essentially in on it without them knowing they were in on it.
Right.
They got caught up in the glitz and glamour of that lifestyle just as much as the kids did.
He befriended the moms just as much as the kids.
Oh, sure. Well, so the boy Wade from Australia, when they're back in Australia, Michael buys him a fax machine and is sending Wade faxes, and then Michael says, have Wade come live with me for a year. And the mom's like, no, it's my son. You're not going to take him for a year. And then he starts sending faxes and calling the mom, and trying to, butter the mom up a little bit more to like, okay, let's bring the whole family then. And eventually that's what happens. Right. He gets the mom and the daughter and Wade to come over to the United States from Australia to leave behind her husband and her other son, which is just, it blows me away. Like as a new parent, I'm staying home. I had the day off of work when I watched this, and my son stays with me when I do that, and I'm sitting there holding him, going, "No, this is never going to happen." And like, there's just no way.
But I mean, it is crazy, and the parents were stupid on that behalf. But but in that sense, it would really be like a bad example because you don't have a sibling, but like it'd be your brother, like be like, hey, like I know Kai, like he sees him all the time, and like he hangs out with him, and like I gets to know him, and like. Eventually, like, yeah, like I'll go let Kai stay with him for like a week or two. Obviously, this is your fictional sexual predator brother, but but like that. But that's the
son of a bitch,
right? But that's the same thing. Is like, it's Michael at that point was not just a stranger, and it's obviously very easy for us to just to be like, that's fucking crazy. But
it is.
But like they hung out for I don't know, like it sounded like months. Like he would come to like their regular house and be like, this is crazy, like I don't get to live like this because I think this is like a new experience for me. And it's like he would come and it was something they didn't talk about in the documentary, which I thought was a really good idea, was how fucked up Michael Jackson's life was because his father was horribly abusive.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm sure a lot of it stems from there, but that would have painted him as more of like a victim himself, which he's, in a sense, yes, he is, but he's still a monster, and fuck that man.
He's 100% a victim, but the difference between him and other victims is he became what he became.
Right.
He allowed it to turn him into a sexual predator himself. I mean, and I don't know what his father did other than physically abuse him, but
a lot of emotional abuse too.
Right. But I don't know if there was anything sexual there or not, but that definitely turned Michael into what he became. It was a component of it.
Right.
And he might have been predisposed to do that anyway, who knows. But he was in a position of power, and he abused that power to molest little boys.
Yeah. Like for years and over again. And like I think Wade said it was from like 7 to 14, and
yeah,
I can't remember how long the other one was, but like multiple times and like throughout their lives, and he would almost like pit the kids against each other, essentially showing again like that like the abusal tactic of like showing jealousy of, and like he essentially made Wade want him more, because again Wade thought this was like a loving thing, and like he knew that the whatever other kid is like now Michael's like chosen molester or molestee, I guess. And like again, this is like this common tactics. Like watching this whole documentary, it was like I was like, Michael did nothing new that I haven't like read or seen before. Like this is all stuff that he is like that is common things that abusers do.
Right. I mean, I knew he was accused of it. I knew that I felt, yes, I think he did some things, but the things they described him doing, that I never let those, I guess, enter my mind. You know, I never went down that road of what could he have done.
It's easy to just be like, he molested a kid, wipe hands, like, okay, that's it. Like, I know he did a bad thing. That's all that I know.
I guess it comes down again to my naivety with the whole subject, just because I personally have not experienced this, and I haven't known anybody who has shared with me
that you know of. But
I'm sure there's people who've had this happen. I just don't know about it, and so I'm pretty naive on the whole thing and what people do behind closed doors, you know. And I hate saying
or
that.
in closets and secret closets that he has.
Right. Oh my God. Or just wide open movie theaters that he has in his house.
Yep.
You know, but you always think if you always hear like he diddled, you know, maybe you just reach in and you touch him a little bit or something, right? But like, no, he would have them give him blowjobs,
and then he would do it back to them.
And he would give them blowjobs,
which is crazy,
you know. And so it was, I guess, in his mind, a mutual thing, right, where he was giving and they were giving. And to him, maybe that's how he justified it somehow for a little bit in his head. I don't know.
Or use it again, like as a power tactic
them,
of
like, hey,
making them
do this
pretend that they love each other.
Right. You know, and the fact that he would have them go until he's close to climax and then have them go to the edge of the bed and get on all fours and turn around or spread their butt cheeks apart.
Yeah, that was
like, and then he would finish himself off.
Up, but
like, are you kidding me? Like, this is... That it just is, I don't know, it's insane. I keep using that word, but it just blows me away that that's what people get their jollies off on, you know? Like, you know, and what, Wade had to throw away a pair of underwear.
Yeah, and that one was like where he talks about like he had like penetrative anal sex with Wade. And I guess like Wade like left his underwear there or something, or maybe he took him home. But he took him home because Michael called him and was like, "You need to get rid of that," because it was evidence. Like and then Michael knew that like because he knew what he was doing was wrong. Like
correct.
That was never like an instance where he was I don't know so innocent or didn't think he was doing something incorrect. But Michael always knew it was wrong, like morally, ethically, legally, all that. But
that's why he had a team of lawyers.
Right. And one who has the craziest fucking hair I've ever seen. Who is that dude with the fucking weird wig or like whatever
right, I know, it's
that
like,
was?
Okay, so it's, you guys can visualize, it's just gray hair, shoulder length, but then he had bangs like in the front.
Yeah, it looked like
it looked like a pilgrim.
It looked like an anime character hair like wig that put on like a 45 or 60-year-old man like. It was nuts. That dude was crazy.
It was insane. But the lawyers, so these guys, they love him so much. When he's accused the first time, they both go and testify on his behalf. They're still being molested by him. He's
also being coached on what to say.
And then this lawyer with the crazy ass hair, I'm guessing he was there in the 90s.
Right.
Is one of the ones coaching little boys on what to say because Michael Jackson is paying these lawyers so much money that they are willing to put boys on the stand, little 7, 8, 9-year-olds on the stand to lie about what happened and be coached on it so much that it's like they are telling the truth. Because think about it. An actor learns their lines. You know, and a method actor becomes the character in the scene, right? So they think what they're doing is what they would do,
Right.
right? Same concept here. They coached them and trained them so much that it was second nature for them to just get up on the stand and say the lie, but say it as a truth.
Yeah, and like not even just the coaching, but back to like when Michael was with them, he like they talk about if we get caught, both our lives are ruined.
Both
Again,
our lives.
another like abuse tactic to keep it all hidden. Of like, if you tell anyone, this will screw like your whole life up, and so they're too scared to say anything because who knows? Like, especially to like a little kid, like they don't know what that means or the ramifications of anything of that. They just know that their best friend and person that they love is telling them, if they do this, you will ruin both of our lives.
So the person they've got the person they love. B, this person is telling them your life will be over if you say anything about our love.
Mm-hmm.
That is just mind numbing, just to think about. Like,
Yeah, and they talk. I just thought about like all this like other stuff of in Neverland Ranch. People walking down the hall will trigger alarms, so Michael knows people are coming.
right, little bells are going off.
Right.
You know, like he's got motion sensors and all kind of shit in there. So that way, when the mom's walking down the hall to come get her son to take him back home to Australia, he's fully clothed.
Yeah, and what was it like? The guest house was like super far away from the main house, so like the family would stay. I don't know what the actual distance is, but like a mile or two away from Michael and the kids, so he could molest these poor children.
Well, and then he had another home. Like, so you had the main manor, the guest house, and then there was another house where he took the boys.
Right.
You know, with a narrow, only one way to come up it road.
Yep.
That you could see them coming. You know, and that's just it's like he put together this Neverland Ranch with the explicit purpose of bringing kids over and molesting them.
Which I mean, in all honesty, he probably did.
That's
like it's
has
it's
to,
pedophile
right?
ranch. It's all it really is.
It's premeditated child molestation.
Yeah.
I have the money, I have the means, I have the desire. I'm going to put together this fantasy land that's got, you know, games,
A full theme park,
roller coasters,
a zoo, like
the whole nine yards. So when kids come over, they feel comfortable with me, and then I'm going to fondle them.
yeah, and again, like back to like abuse tactics. That's showing them that here's all the stuff that I did for you. You need to do something for me now. Like,
right, you need to
I did this because I love you. Like, don't you love me back? And again, that's another abuse tactic that just not only with kids but with like adults too. It's just like these like manipulative ideas and these abuse cycles that just go on and on of like, well, you don't really love me then, but I did all this for you.
Quid pro quo, right?
Right.
I mean, it's what happens in the workplace. You know?
Yeah, but that's that's more of a transactional power almost.
Yeah. No, it is, but it's just at a different level. I mean, Michael's was at a, at 100 level, and what happens with workplace comparatively is a 5, but it's so people can understand kind of what it is. I mean, that's it. I mean, you do this for me, I do this for you.
Right.
And that it really in a nutshell is what it is.
It is, but like in this scenario, in abuse scenarios, it's more about. Yes, like I do something for you, you do something for me, but in the sense of, well, this is what two loving people do, or
right.
however many people it is. As we're like in business, it's more of like, if you do this, I mean, I'm gonna give you this raise, not because I love you, but because I want to have sex with you, and like that kind of, like, and it's a little different.
It is more transactional,
right? And as where this is more of like psychological manipulation versus of just like I have power. You can't do anything about it, which I mean also happens too in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, the amount of kids that he kind of ran through the door, I mean, it almost is transactional in a sense because
Got to be so many. Like,
I mean, they say in the documentary, both Wade and James, they come over to his house, and there's other boys there, and you've already mentioned it a little bit, and they're jealous They're getting jealous because he's
Right.
giving this attention to another boy. And that really, I think that shows that for him, it really was just, I'm going to groom as many kids as I can and bring them over, and then I'm going to do what I want with them. So for him, like at the end of the day, he might have communicated it was love,
Oh, for sure.
but it really was just to line them up, bring them
Right.
in.
And again, like common like abuse things, but and like I think it was James who said like he went back over to Neverland Ranch and there's like other kids there, but he didn't get to sleep in the bed with Michael. He had to go sleep on the couch in like another
Right.
room or something.
Yeah.
He talked about how he was like crying a bunch because he felt rejected because Michael wasn't raping him, which is like just insane.
That's
like
it. No, that's it.
and like nobody could see Chris's just like shocked like expression, even though he saw the same thing I did, because it's just like such a wild
It's
thing.
just
And then
for
like
us to
I'm
use
with
those
you.
terms, I guess,
Right.
is really the most shocking thing to me. And the first, if you don't ever watch the documentary, guys, you should, first off. But the first 30, 45 minutes is really the most graphic part of it. The first hour, I guess, really, if you do both of them, where they describe what happened. And it just, I think the entire time, my jaws just dropped. You know, I'm just, no phone. I've got it put to the side. You know, I just can't believe what I'm hearing is happening. You know, and it's crazy.
Right, and really, I think it's like a good watch, not about Michael Jackson. It's good to open your eyes to see experiences that, like you said, like I don't have any part of this. Like I don't know anybody who is open about this kind of stuff to me. So like if I know someone like that, and I'm sure I do, like I don't know about it. So like I've never like heard like this much detail about it, and like I've like I said, I've read and like looked into some of that stuff before. I just like heard stories like whether I'm on Reddit or
Sure.
again you hear like sexual harassment stuff like in like comics Twitter and film Twitter, but to hear all of that and like actually see from the like abusee's point of view of how they feel about themselves, like how much they hate themselves because they weren't good enough for Michael or they were jealous of these other kids, or to show like the manipulation psychologically of what Michael did to these people, and like not just be like, oh, he attacked me one time and that was it, but more of he created a scenario and situation where they loved him. And I think I already mentioned it, but like when he died, like they were very confused and they were never happy. Like that was never part of it.
No.
They were very upset and
They were
very
crushed.
distraught. Yeah.
You
And
know,
that was hard for them to deal with.
Another thing that happened is just a wedge was driven between the boys and their parents. Mm-hmm. You know, especially for Wade, you know, because his mom moved half of the family to the United States. His dad was already starting to struggle with the relationship and then coming over to U.S. all the time anyway. And then now you're going to add on to the fact that the family is gone. The dad's developing mental health issues.
Yeah, I think he was
he's
diagnosed bipolar. Correct?
bipolar and just struggling. And it gets so bad that the man, you know, unfortunately commits suicide.
Yeah.
You know, the man kills himself. And you have to wonder if Michael Jackson had never entered this family's life, would he still be alive?
Yeah. Like,
You know,
I mean,
Wade may not be famous and he may not, you know, have choreographed NSYNC concerts and Britney Spears shows and music videos and whatnot, but he might still be with his dad,
right.
you know, and that to me is just heartbreaking. And he has to hate himself for that.
Well, I think he even mentions, I think he blamed himself for the death. Because it was like, yeah, because he, I think, was getting to know his father a little more. This when he was older. And then I believe he told his father, like, I am leaving, like, I'm going to America. And then the next day he killed himself.
Right.
Which essentially was all he really needed to say of, this is your fault.
Right.
Whether it was actually or not, and obviously he had bipolar, and that's a lot to deal with. But the message I took from it was like he killed himself in retaliation to him leaving.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm right there with you, and that's I just can't even think. Like, what are you going to do in your life that is going to drive a parent to kill themselves?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened. That's what Michael caused. You know, and so now Wade doesn't have to just deal with the fact that he was molested as a child, but that because of everything that he did and that happened to him, his father also took his life.
Right.
You know, and so now you have that survivor grief for that. You know, and so I can't even imagine how he's coping with any of
I'm
this.
surprised he was like able to like function ever. I mean, I guess they talk about like his depression and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I'm surprised he's like able to be around. Like he has a wife and kid, and like he still has his career. Like he was still able to keep that going despite all this stuff. And I again, like they talk about like how hard it was for him, and like he struggled a lot. And there's like a lot of dips in the marriage, but that dude's dealt with way more stuff than most people have.
Oh, sure. Same with Safechuck.
Yeah.
I mean, he went through bouts of depression, and his poor wife, you know, just the way she was saying, well, this is just our relationship.
Yeah, because she had talked about like she was like an outgoing person, and like she thought he wasn't, but it's because, well, I mean, he still might not be, but like he had such severe depression, and he's just like, I don't want to go out, like I can't, and like I can't leave the bed, but it's more played off as like, let's just stay in bed and like watch movies and that kind of stuff.
Right, and she just took it as, well, that's just our relationship. This is just who we are, you know. And,
right,
and then when he went through bouts of severe depression, she again just basically said the same thing. You know, I guess this is just what we have to deal with.
Right, and it's very easy to say,
but,
like, because I'm not sure when the time frame of all that was, but I mean, like I've talked about before, like mental health is still a stigma today, and it's unfortunately going to be a stigma for probably decades more, if not longer.
Oh yeah, I'm sure our kids are going to deal with it.
Right, but like depression, it's not like a person can tell you they're depressed. Like they're not just like, I have depression, I can't get out of bed today. It's just like, what the fuck is this person doing? Like why aren't you doing something? Like why can't just get out of bed? Like just do it. You can do it and you're
get
fine.
Up and go to work.
And,
right?
and that's not how that works. Like
no.
it's a severe thing, and like I said, like unless you are trained, I guess, to know the symptoms, and even then, it's probably hard to like recognize that in someone you love, like a spouse, just to be saying like, oh, I think that person's depressed. We probably need to get some kind of actual help versus like get the fuck out of bed.
Right. I mean, it's so easy for us to just go, oh, well, you're tired, whatever.
Right.
Or yeah, just get up. I mean, open the windows and just get out of bed. Just come on. I mean, it's, you know, and where I work, you know, you've got a lot of people who come in, and I mean, we have a ton of people in our office, and I struggle some days with going, why can't you just show up?
Right.
You know, and it's hard. I mean, somebody says they have
and you
a
don't know their
migraine,
lives, like.
but I don't know how bad it is. I don't know
Right.
what's truly going on, and so over the last few years, the last few management jobs I've had, I've just had to go, okay, I don't know exactly what's happening in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can either choose to trust that they're telling me the truth and that it's really as rough and bad as they say it is, or I can continue to be bitter about it and find somebody to replace them, or I can try to help them as best I can in my role.
Mm-hmm.
And I've chosen to go with that path. Is okay. You say you've got this going on. This is what we can do for you here.
Right.
Is that going to help? Do you want any of that from us? And half the time they say no. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do what I can, but let me know if you need something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to them to do what they want. I mean, the person has to decide that they're ready to make a change and get help.
Right. And like it's really hard. Obviously, it's easy for us to say that, and like I've talked about my experience with therapy as well, where it's and the whole time I'm watching this documentary, I'm like gripping like my armchair. I'm just like, seek help. Like mental health needs to be like less of an issue, and obviously this is an extreme situation, and they were told essentially nothing. Like they were trained and taught and forced to think that nothing wrong happened, and Because they denied it even to their wives for like a long time. I don't think they told them until after Michael had died.
It was well after he passed. Yeah,
Right.
It was 2013 for Wade when he finally said something, and Jackson died in 2009, I believe.
Yeah.
And
I really remember because one, I got a lot of phone calls that day. Like a lot of people were calling asking how I was, which I didn't give a shit. Like I don't know Michael Jackson. Like I was like, that sucks that he died, but like I don't know this man. And I had to go see Transformers 2 that night.
Balla.
Yeah, I should have gone out into the clubs instead, but whatever. That's my big Michael Jackson regret. That's how we're just gonna end now. Have a good night, everybody. I don't know. Thanks, Sarah.
I watched Transformers 2 instead of grieving over Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I would say like they would play a lot of Michael Jackson music that night, but to derail a very serious conversation. But yeah, they didn't tell their wives for a long time.
Right, they were both married for 10 years or so.
Did they have kids already?
I believe they did. Yes, and that's actually for me, I think, the turning point maybe in their story. Right, so they both have sons, and they both look at their sons and go, "How could anybody manipulate a child? How could anybody think that that's the right thing to do?" And then they thought for themselves, I didn't know, because this child doesn't know. They know what they're told because there's an adult telling them to believe a thing, and children are naive, and children will believe in things, and children are easily manipulated. And they both had that realization when they had their sons, and that was a turning point for them as well. So I think Michael Jackson dies, they both go into more of a depression essentially afterwards. They have their sons, and they both go, this cannot be a thing. I cannot continue to hold this in. And I don't know. I mean, I get it, having my son. I mean, as I said earlier in the show, like I'm looking at him as I'm watching this documentary going, I got to make sure this never happens. Like this can't be a thing for him. And I would never forgive myself if it did happen.
Yeah, it's like a parent's greatest fear. And the mothers talk about it, because are both fathers dead?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, because the other one's just not in the
just divorced. He's just not in the family.
But
anymore.
Both mothers talk about how they failed as parents because they did not keep their kids safe.
Right.
And that's like a parent's greatest fear of I could not protect my child. One, I could not protect my child. Two, I could not protect my child when I easily could have.
Right. I'm in the next room.
Right.
I'm down the hall.
They let that happen.
Correct. And it's easy. It's easy for us to say as a parent, I'm not going to let that happen to my son. I'm not going to let that happen to my daughter. And it's like you said earlier, like if I have this fictitious,
your sexual predator brother, right?
And he would have an in. Yeah. He would have an easy way to get into my child.
You'd have trusted him, assuming in our fictitious story of your sexual predator brother.
I've trusted him for 37 years.
Right. Yeah. You know him as a good guy.
And then it would be very easy for him to take, my child off. Like, oh, sure, you're going to go stay with Uncle Joe or, Sam or whatever his name is in this scenario. Sam.
That's my dad's name.
Oh.
Don't use Sam.
Sorry.
It's all right.
God. Just digging a hole.
It's all right. It's all right.
So, he goes off because Uncle lives, a town over, and he's like, Uncle's got four-wheelers, and I'm going to go ride the four-wheelers with him. So he goes over to his house, and it's like no big deal, and he stays there for the weekend, and then my son comes back, and he's just a little off on Monday. I'm like, you okay? I'm just not feeling well, got a cold or something. And
he had been trained not to say anything.
And then, and then in a few days, he's back to his normal self, and, Uncle so-and-so comes over, Uncle Predator.
Uncle Predator. Let's do that.
Struggling on names that people I don't know. I don't want to use those. And he comes over and he's like, hey, what's up, little man? And, they're back at it again, right?
And you think nothing's wrong.
Nothing's wrong.
And, this goes on for a while. And it's like, obviously, Michael Jackson's like...
and he comes out and he tells me, and then I go murder my brother.
Yeah. As you probably should. I can't. That's what I would do. It's
I mean,
I have, like-
there would at least be a severe beating of
Right.
the highest order.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
obviously it's very easy to say we would go murder that person, but like killing a person's hard. Like,
Yeah.
like it's to drain the life of somebody is
Right, and to watch the life go from their eyes.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't ever want to see that, but I can tell, I know that it would be a struggle for me to not go do something.
Mm-hmm.
And it would also just be a struggle for me to not do something to myself, you know, and not like in a suicide sense or anything like that, but just like alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, going into a deep depression and just beating myself up emotionally over it, like these moms are. I mean, I can't even imagine. You know, and Wade's mom said she doesn't want to know what Michael Jackson did physically to her son because she straight says in the documentary, I would not be able to survive that.
Right.
And I'm kind of like, I get that. I feel like if I had allowed something like that to happen, I would probably be in a very similar boat. And so when she was showing the documentary, you didn't watch the Oprah special, but they say that Dan Reed said, when I went to go show the families, I had to fast forward through those parts so she couldn't watch them. You know, so she could see the rest of it. And then both mothers were sad that the sons did not forgive them in the documentary because the question was asked. And James Safechuck straight up says, we're going down a path that potentially leads to that, you know, and they're both in that same path, you know. Yeah, we're on a path. It might happen someday,
but they can't get there now, and I mean, I side with them. Obviously, like, it's very easy for me to be so far removed from this, be like, yeah, like, those are bad parents. Like, I would have never done that, but like, who knows? Like, Michael Jackson did it to so many kids. It's not like just these two parents are the only ones that fucked up. Like, he was a charming person. He was the most like well-known person on the planet, and when
people adored him and still do.
Right, and there's like deniers and all this stuff, and he did it. Fuck all you who think that. Like, he did it.
He molested kids.
I knew that shit when I was in high school dancing to his music.
And here's what's going to happen. Over the next decade, other kids are going to come out and say something. It just has to happen at this point because, you know, Wade's been saying it for several years now. James Safechuck's been saying it for several years now. They did this documentary. You know, even Corey Feldman has kind of, you know, tapped the brakes from what I heard a little bit on his defense
Did he
of
say,
Michael Jackson.
I didn't know he was connected to Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah. He was one of the kids that went over.
Well, I knew Corey Feldman's a
like-
whole other thing. That dude got fucking passed around in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
He got raped so many times.
Both Corys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so... And he admits to that, but then he says Michael never did anything with him. And I truly believe that maybe Michael didn't do anything to Macaulay Culkin or Corey Feldman. And there's a thought here. Well, they were, especially Macaulay Culkin, about as famous at that moment in time as Michael was.
Right.
Name a child star that was more famous than Macaulay Culkin in 1992.
I can't name a famous child star more famous than Macaulay Culkin in 1992
Period, right?
ever. Yeah.
Like, he just was the most famous child star. So is Michael Jackson going to then groom and rape and molest Macaulay Culkin? Probably not.
Right.
But is he going to befriend him just because that's what he does?
Good
And it's
optics.
given that wholesome image that he's looking for? Sure. I think it was all part of the facade that he put on.
Right.
You know, and so sure, yeah, Macaulay Culkin could probably say with a straight face, he never did anything to me.
Yeah.
But these other kids can't, and they shouldn't. You know, and more needs to be done.
Right. And again, that's obviously very easy for us to say, where we're not the ones that had it happen to and aren't dealing with all of that. And who knows, like, whatever situation those poor children or adults at this point are in or were in.
Right.
So,
No, absolutely. So I don't know. He's a son of a bitch. He's a monster.
yeah.
So there you go.
Really always was.
Yeah.
So, on that super bummer episode, let's go ahead and end it. Thanks everyone for listening to Thursday Thunderdome. I want to thank Sarah Lichty, who created our logo and did our graphic design. You can find her work at sarahlichtydesign.com. Thank you to Jimmy Nimbus for doing our intro and outro music. That song is called Top Off, and you can find it on jimmynimbus.bandcamp.com. And please check out Hotel Records, which he's also a part of. I need to cut that paragraph down. It takes a lot of my breath, and I still have my cough from last week. You can find us on Twitter at ThursdayTDome or on Facebook and Instagram at Thursday Thunderdome. If you want to leave us any comments, questions, topics, all that, you can hit us up on Twitter or email. That's ThursdayThunderdome@gmail.com. And finally, you can find all of our shows on all your favorite podcast platforms: Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, and all that. Please go to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. That'll help our show a lot. The more reviews and ratings we have, more people can find us and can hear our episodes about Michael Jackson or us argue about Batman, whatever your favorite thing is and want to fight about or want to listen to.
Yeah, if you're not into the heavy topics,
Yeah, let's do a light one next week.
Yeah,
we got to find a light one. This one was very, very heavy.
Quite a downer. But, I mean, obviously, needed to be said.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, and again, thanks everybody for listening. But, if you need help, get it.
Yeah, again, mental health, look for warning signs for depression or abuse. Obviously, it's very easy for me to say that, but something we should probably all research and look into.
Yeah.
Just so we can at least identify something that is happening.
If you see something in a friend or family member, do something.
Yeah.
Say something.
Yep. And on that, thank you.
Thanks, guys.